Shawn Carney, president of 40 Days for Life, is on with us this morning. Good morning to you, Shawn.
Good morning, Joe.
Praise be to God.
Good to hear you're going to be on the Spanish radio. I look forward to hearing.
With 100.
See, you could take Soros's 120 grand. That whole thing's outrageous. But you could take his 120 grand and just talk about our rich Catholic faith all day.
That's exactly right. Yes.
And he fires you for being Catholic. You could sue him.
Yes, it's a winner for everybody involved.
That's a great idea.
Except for the listeners who
we have our plan.
Can't take my Spanish. They would be upset about that part. But anyway, it's good to hear your voice again this morning, Shawn Carney. Praise be to God. Big news yesterday breaking. A man from California decided he wanted to come and attempt to murder a Supreme Court justice. It seems the cult of death is not happy about the potential of losing their ability to kill the unborn. What say you, Shawn Carney?
Yeah, this was serious because you see a headline like that and it's going to be an overreaction. It was a guy walking around in a black coat and he had a water gun, and everybody kind of freaked out. And this was quite the opposite. He flew from California. He was armed. He had everything. He had the duct tape. He had flashlights. He had a hammer. He had a crowbar. He definitely had a plan to kill Kavanaugh and perhaps some of his family, and then he admitted as much, and he's charged with attempt to murder a Supreme Court justice, which I don't know when the last person was who was arrested on that charge. It's really like a twilight zone for the pro-life movement. I mean, how many the bombing of abortion facilities and the murder of some abortion doctors set our movement back so much. And I know the first 10 years of 40 Days for Life, we ran around and just said, we're peaceful, we're prayerful, we're peaceful, we're prayerful. And now we have that track record, and praise God, we've never had, any incident like this. And people know that we're peaceful. Even the secular media, the Washington Post has called us peaceful. The Guardian has called us peaceful. And now it seems, the last 3 years, we've had tons of attacks from pro-abortion activists at our vigils. Obviously since the Supreme Court leak, we just see their true colors coming out of how violent abortion advocates are. And for years, they didn't say things like this. They didn't do things like this. But abortion is built on violence. Violence is required in every single abortion. When you advocate for abortion, whether you acknowledge it or not, you're advocating for violence because there's no non-violent abortion. So we're basically seeing their true colors come out with not just this guy. I'm not saying everybody who supports abortion is going to go and try to kill Kavanaugh, but 3 weeks ago we did a video, we did a vlog on it. There were many people in the media saying, "Oh, somebody just needs to cap off one of these Supreme Court justices. Wouldn't that be great?" There was a lot of that rhetoric on social media and in mainstream media, and so this is what makes abortion unique. No one was saying this when Obamacare was passed. No one was saying this when gay marriage was passed. No one was saying this with the vaccine mandates. We need to go kill our Supreme Court justices. Abortion is very unique. That's why it was leaked. The only leak in the modern era.
Going back to something you just said, I think about the media frenzy because there's no reason for people to be acting this way if they weren't manipulated by the media to believe that this is really a global effect, right? Because if Roe is overturned, well, it just gets all those abortion things get kicked back to the states, and a guy from California has nothing to worry about. California has talked about enshrining abortion into law. Would you say that most of this overreaction, this frenzy that we see from these really sick people is caused by the media, or do you think it's something else, like you mentioned, like abortion is violence, so they're just violent people?
Yeah, I think it's that the average person doesn't know. It's a good point that you're making. You're in California. It's like, fine, it'll be good for our economy. We'll build more abortion clinics. What do I care? So the average person may not realize that. But I think it's deeper than that. And the guy who was arrested pointed to that. He said, quote, "I wanted to give my life purpose. So I was going to kill Kavanaugh than myself."
Oof.
And that points to what we saw in the school shooting a few weeks ago. That points to this big problem in our country that nobody wants to address, which is that we've taken a baseball bat to the family the last 40 years in our country. And you just can't do that and get away with it. We don't have people walking around who feel like they're loved, that they're cared for. They have, forget the spiritual formation, they have very little to no human formation. And they don't realize that you don't wake up and go grab your dad's gun and go shoot whoever you want because you're angry about something. And when you have no human formation, you have no spiritual formation, when you have no family life, and that is what we don't want to address, and that's a big problem. And you can address, gun laws, you can address abortion laws, you can break all that down, but abortion is different in that no one is supposed to survive an abortion. Every single abortion is designed to kill an unborn child. And we're all outraged at any of these crazy shootings that just set us back and devastate us and make us look up like what kind of culture that we live in. What kind of a culture do we live in? But we don't do that with the 3,000 abortions every day. And I think things like this with the leak wake us up to that of how, how close the left is to abortion. I mean, it is their sacrament. And it is the worst thing that goes on in our country.
Yeah, it sure is. We're about a minute away from a break with Shawn Carney here from 40 Days for Life. And I was looking at the reports of all of these firebombings of these pregnancy clinics. I mean, Maryland, Washington State, D.C., I think Wisconsin has one. I mean, there's a bunch of them. They are literally firebombing these buildings. How is that going to convince anyone that they need to keep Roe in place?
It's not. What it's going to do is my hope is that it does what it did to us, what it did to the pro-life movement in the 90s, which is put these terrorists on terrorist watch lists. I mean, that's where they belong, because right now it's a little sneaky. They're going in the middle of the night, and they're doing all this stuff. But particularly for 40 Days for Life, we have an emergency response plan. We always have at all of our vigils, and we have over 70 locations that are out there every day.
Just before the break, Shawn, you were talking about your contingency plan in this, potential summer of rage, because the death cult is raging at the potential of the overturn of Roe. So 40 Days for Life is a massive movement internationally. What are your plans in case, violence erupts and the worst happens?
Well, we've always had an emergency contingency plan and response plan with all of our locations. Safety is very important to us. We have a lot of former law enforcement on our international team, and we train on this. We train on the legal issues, but we also train on how to protect our people. And we've suspended vigils before. We've not gone out to certain locations in certain circumstances. We respond to threats. We've had 2 incidents last year where people brought a loaded gun out and
Wow.
and kind of pumped a shotgun and all of that. And so we take it very, very seriously. And granted, this is less than 1% of our locations, but we have 1 million volunteers worldwide, and safety is priority number one, and we protect them. And one of my predictions is we watch all of these threats, and there's goofball threats, and then there's serious threats online, as we know. But as we watch it, one of my predictions is we are going to see a huge spike in violence, because they are going to overturn Roe, and I think it's either going to be June 27th or 28th. And when that happens, it'll go right in the 4th of July. You'll have this spike in violence, and you'll have a media frenzy, and then it will trickle off and go away. And then anytime it sort of lights up again, it'll be, something direct towards the pro-life movement, like we're seeing now with the pregnancy centers, or it'll be an attack on a 40 Days for Life campaign. It'll be something like that. But I think as far as the mass hysteria with the country, I predict it'll be a huge spike, don't get me wrong, and then it'll go away. And I could be wrong. I pray that I'm not, obviously. But it's not only my hope, it's my actual prediction, because abortion is very different. This isn't George Floyd. There's not a large group of people, just waiting to tear down our whole country. And also, I don't think yet, now this could happen, I don't think, speaking of George Soros and those sort of leftists, they have used race to divide our country. They've used this transgender insanity to divide our country. But they have not mobilized pro-abortion activists to the level that they could. If they were, they would have already done it with the leak. And you just haven't seen a lot of that. We see the stories, but there's not people in your town, wherever you live, marching and being outraged about the leak. It's at the justices' houses. It's at all these things, because the pro-abortion movement is very weak in the grassroots. I think we're actually seeing that. I mean, this is their moment. They're losing abortion, and they're really nowhere to be found. Planned Parenthood has said very little. It was very telling. Planned Parenthood has said very little. So they just don't have the numbers in the grassroots, and that's what we've been saying for years, but we're actually seeing it play out. I think there will be violence and outrage for the people who just have nothing better to do. They can get mad, and then it will trickle off and go away, and everybody will go back to the Ukraine and transgender and all of this other, all these other issues.
Shawn, the one thing that I find interesting here is, a number of things, but whenever this all first started, when they announced that the leak happened, and there were a few attacks on churches, and people were saying, wow, I was expecting so much more, that this was actually underwhelming of how few attacks there were. I was kind of the opposite opinion. I was thinking the exact opposite. I was thinking nothing has actually changed yet. Nothing has happened, and people are already doing violent things. And I can't imagine what the reaction will be when it actually happens. And my concern is, I'd like to organize rosary rallies, like to participate in other people's rosary rallies and go out protesting these abortion, among other immoral vices that are promoted by the culture. And before, we go, it's peaceful on our end, of course, and usually the worst you'll get is someone yell at you, someone flick you off, things like that. But now that we're seeing more and more violence happening, namely like what we saw at the house of Brett Kavanaugh, should we be more concerned, and what should we do to prepare? You said that 40 Days for Life has contingency plans, but what about as individuals, as small groups, me and my friends, going out to an abortion clinic or going out to do a public square rosary rally? What should we be prepared for, and how should we be cautious?
That's a good question. Well, first off, in your location, one thing that solves a lot, and 40 Days for Life knows this over the last 15 years, is your location matters. The actual location where you're going. Is it normally safe? Is it normally not safe? That is 90% of it. It really is. The other thing is how many people are going to be there. I wouldn't have a lot of fear doing what you're doing. I think that's perfectly safe. It's like anything else. You want to know your surroundings, just like when you're going into a Walmart. But it's perfectly safe. You can gather. Definitely make sure there's not just one man there, but multiple men, and pray your rosary, and Our Lady will protect you, and use our rights. I'm the opposite. I think a lot of this stuff is overstated. I think that they went into churches. I think they're targeting justices, and they're targeting empty pregnancy centers. They're picking on pregnancy centers when there's not even anyone there. But as far as people going up to a large group of people, I could be totally wrong, and we could see this change. But through doing 40 Days for Life vigils, when you look at 40 Days for Life, we're in 1,000 cities around the world. We're in peaceful cities. We're in violent cities. We're in extremely violent neighborhood in some of these locations, particularly in like Bogota, Colombia, and New York City. We just don't have that many incidents, and never have. And we have pockets of groups that just hate us and sort of harass us. But 40 Days for Life, to me, should give the pro-life movement a huge wave of confidence going into this summer that, we've been doing this 15 years out on the streets in some very shady places where these abortion facilities are, and we just haven't had that many incidences of people, threatening or coming out or beating somebody up. We had our first volunteer get beaten up in 2018. So I would really tell people that they should not be fearful. They should go out, and they should be aware of their surroundings, and they should be prudent. And if you need to de-escalate any situation that comes up, if somebody starts yelling, you immediately call the police. And the best thing to do, if you're going to do that, is to let the police know that you're going out there beforehand. That's the best thing you can do. And sometimes they'll just come out. Sometimes they'll drive by. But I'm very proud of our team. We've done a great job of protecting our people. And in some locations, we've just spent a tremendous amount of money, not from Soros, but a tremendous amount of money on professional security.
Yeah.
And it's expensive, and we'll go and we'll raise it and we'll spend more, but we're going to protect our people. If the local leader doesn't want to suspend the vigil and thinks it's safe enough to go out, but there is some threats, we'll hire professional security, and it all goes away.
Yeah.
It all goes away.
Hey, let me ask you, you mentioned something a minute ago about the violence sort of peaking and then trickling off. And I find that interesting because one of the thoughts I had this morning while driving into the studio was I wonder if the leak wasn't a strategy from Supreme Court Justice Roberts. Speculation, total speculation on my part, but I'm wondering if they thought that maybe we could slowly warm the country up to the idea instead of an abrupt, boom, Roe is now overturned. What would you say to that? Do you think it's possible that they thought it might be better to sort of warn the country about the pending overturning of Roe?
That's a fun conspiracy theory, Joe. I'm very proud of you.
Thanks.
That on
Appreciate it.
Here's my response, and then I got a better conspiracy theory
good.
for you.
Praise be to God. It's getting juicy. I got 2 minutes.
I'm going to out crazy you're crazy. No, the reason yours is wrong is because the Supreme Court, conservative or liberal, they're simply too arrogant about their status in the world. Yeah. We don't leak. No one even knows, no one knows what the color of the tile is in the bathroom. That kind of stuff.
It's teal, by the way.
So they sit in a room and so I think that and Roberts is big on that. He's big on etiquette. He came out. Yeah. He's a horrible Chief Justice, but he comes out and he's very formal and he's always been that way. No, I think that there's easily a 10 to 20% chance that it was a pro-lifer who leaked it. And we have seen the Supreme Court change on these abortion laws time and time again. And there is a chance, it's unlikely, but it's not outrageous. It wouldn't surprise me at all. But there's a chance that this opinion was going around. It was so awesome. It beat up Roe so bad. And Roberts did not want to overturn Roe that the pro-life person thought, you know what? Every time this happens, Roberts does the whole Roberts thing and messes it up. I'm not going to let that happen. I'm doing this for the babies. And they leaked it.
Wow. So you're on the board. You're putting all your chips on a pro-lifer at this point.
No. I'm not putting on my chips.
You heard it here first.
What are you talking about?
You heard it here first.
So you heard it. Well, I've said it before, but we can say you heard it here first. But if that happens, I just don't think the listeners should be like, I can't believe it because of the history of these pro-life laws. Look at Texas. We couldn't regulate ourselves. In Louisiana, it was outrageous. So it wouldn't surprise me. It's unlikely. It's probably some liberal crazy clerk.
Everybody seems to suggest at this point that it was, either a Sotomayor clerk or some Kagan or somebody on the hard left leaked it. But I guess we'll see. That's the next question is, and with just a few seconds left, do you think we'll actually ever know who the leaker was? Do you think they'll reveal that information?
I do, and maybe I'm just too much of an optimist, but I get all these people coming up going, they'll never reveal it. I'm like, we haven't had a leak, since the original Roe, by the way. That's the last leak. And I'm like, we're going to find I don't think everybody will just move on. I think they're going to have to find the leaker and make that public.
Yeah. All right. There you go. Praise be to God. Deep insights from the great prophet Shawn Carney. 40 Days for Life. No, I'm teasing. It's great to have you back on the program, Shawn. Thank you for your time today and your your commentary on this incredible and historic moment in time. God bless you. God love you, Shawn. Have a great day.
Thank you. God bless.
All right, praise be to God. Check out 40 Days for Life. Good to hear they got such great strategy in place to take care of their people. Hopefully you're participating there.